and the writing was on the wall, really, when it came down to it, in terms of knowing when to sell. And I think you'll remember that conversation, because I think our offices were right around the corner. And I had just done an article in our Billboard newspaper, or in the Billboard, which was a trade paper at the time. And I remember I got a phone call. I won't go into who it was, but I got a phone call from a gentleman who said, "Hi, my name is so and so. I represent this company, and I would like to buy your company and do an IPO." And I remember the first thing was, "Could you hold on one second?" And I put him on hold, and I walked around to your office. Remember, I said, "What's an IPO?" I mean, but the thing about it for me was, it was never about, I never went into it about the money. It wasn't about the money. It was about the passion, and it was about how much fun as a company we had, and how after 200 employees that we had at the end of the day, how much they just enjoyed. We were like a gang, like when we showed up to record company functions, we hung out in our gang. Like, there would be the HMV people, the Music World people, the CD Plus people, and we all knew each other, but it was such a camaraderie of employees, and I just could not credit our employees as and yourself included. It was just such a love of the company, and a love of the business. Failure is a tough word for an entrepreneur, and failure comes from getting back up on that horse again. Like, if something slides and not the way you want it to go, being able to adapt and being able to continue to steer the ship, around that is where it comes to. So in terms of actually, depicting one or two or 100 failures, there's always some sort of small failures along the way, that don't work out. And it's just how you navigate around them.
It wasn't really, it was great compared to anything I'd ever made before.
Well, of course. Yeah. But so did you go, I mean, the next big step for you was obviously when Torstar came looking for you and hired you but before they had any digital presence anywhere.
Yeah.
And put so you, was that where you went to after that?
Yeah. So when I decided I was going to leave that first place, I started looking in the newspaper for jobs, because that's where jobs were published, because there was no, it was in my future to build the way that people would find jobs on the internet still. So I didn't have time travel. So I looked in the newspaper, and I saw that I looked in the Toronto Star, and I saw that the Toronto Star was hiring for something called the marketing development specialist, and the job description said you'll be developing products, which was what I was doing, which was exciting. And they said that the requirement was that you had a business degree and have used and had experience using the internet. So I was like, yeah, I applied. They interviewed me.
They only asked for experience. They didn't ask for, have you been on the internet? That's the criteria.
I was already not a good corporate fit. Like, I had long hair. I didn't own I didn't own a nice suit. The one suit I owned was wrinkled. It didn't fit properly. But they took but they liked what I had to say. I came with passion about the internet. I came with passion about stuff. The hiring manager, he was also the publisher of a magazine they had called iWeekly that was struggling, and he asked me what I thought of it, and I had praise for it. And so he kind of liked me for that reason too. And so I was offered a one-year contract to work at the Toronto Star to do this marketing role. And my first project was helping them launch the website. And I had ideas for things that I wanted to build inside the digital department with digital, and things were moving too slowly for me in the newspaper division. And so I told people, I think I'm gonna leave, because I'm limited in what I can do here. But I was a rising star, and again, this news got up to the publisher, president of the company. And he went off and thought, and he said, you know what, we're going to create a digital division, and you're too young to be put in charge of it, Tomer, but you'll get a job in it, and you'll be able to pursue not just the one idea that you have, but lots of ideas that you have. So it was very rewarding.
Is this John Hondrickman at the time?
Yeah. Yep. It was John Hondrick at the time.
Big guy.
Yeah. And he put somebody else in charge of it who also had an interesting history, who was also enthusiastic about the internet, older though, and not as well connected. And that was kind of the first time where some things started to kind of splinter for me. So a lot of great things happened in that division. I had taken the careers online. We tried to turn it into a real business, and we ultimately merged with our competitor's career site to create a site called workopolis.com, which became for 15 years the leading career site in Canada. Right. Kind of achieved it, right? Like we were doing a couple $100 million a year in revenue.
Yeah.
We had like 400 employees. We were succeeding, and everybody was trying to imitate us, but it was hard for them because they came late or they just didn't have the brand. We had built some really powerful brands in this time. But I wanted to get to, so I was also getting through a transition. Like the leaders had become amazing. They didn't really need me anymore.
Right.
I wasn't formulating.
Which is where, as an entrepreneur,
I was lonely.
Which is, it gets lonely, but it's also what you want. You wanted to mentor people into the place where they're being able to do it. Exactly.
I had succeeded in putting myself out of being needed.
That's correct.
Right now, I'll give you another really great. So early in my career, someone gave me another piece of advice, which was really useful in getting promoted. They said, if you ever make yourself indispensable, you also make yourself unpromotable. And so I always knew, find someone to take over. Find someone to take over from you so that you can proceed to the next step. Because if you're stuck turning the crank of the machine that you just made,
you're not going to grow.
You got nowhere to go. You're there turning. So find someone else to turn the crank of the machine that you just made.
Product of immigrant parents. My mom's side is Ukrainian, so naturally I was brought up at Jane and Bloor, where most Ukrainians landed in Toronto. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in Toronto, and growing up in Toronto gave me a huge bug to get into the culinary scene, because Toronto is one of the best culinary scenes in Canada. And as a young kid, my parents loved a good life. They were very similar to you and Sharon. Like, you guys entertain, you like to eat out, you like to enjoy the finer things in life. And my parents loved to go to restaurants. So I was brought up in restaurants. To be mediocre or to be, just okay, you had to be the best. Like I remember we would get reviews, and that was a time where like food reviewers would really come in and review, and it would be this like incognito thing. And I remember Joanne Cates, who is huge for Toronto in publication, she had come into the restaurant and she did a caricature in the Toronto Star, and it was of a kitchen door with chickens with their heads cut off. Wow. And we were looking out of the door because she had happened to be there for service one night and see Phil and his robust personality and the way he would talk to his employees. And so that led to the article, but it was pretty interesting. But he was the kind of guy who always, you have to strive for best. I remember one day he walked in, and he used to come in, and you would hear him come in. He would come in and he would drop his keys, and you would hear the keys hit the stainless steel, and everyone would just automatically up. And he would walk in, he would walk right to you, and he would look at whatever you're making. And I remember I was making a creme brulee, and he looked at it and he said, "Do you like that?" Stone cold. Okay. So you're like looking at it and you're like second guessing it. And I looked at him and I said, "Yes, I like it. What do you like about it?" So I had explained what I liked about it. Paused, looked at it. He would do it all the time. Look at it, analyze it, turn it around. And then he looked at it, he goes, "I effing love it." And in full transparency, I see a therapist. It's an amazing relationship. We talk a lot, and it's just something to get off my chest. And we constantly have these conversations. And she's always like, "It's you, right? Like you're never happy." And I know that. Like I'm never content. It's never enough. Maybe we could have done it better this way.
Yeah.
But that's a common trait, Andrea, we're finding certainly as we're going through this with entrepreneurs, that one of the main aspects, main elements of entrepreneurship, certainly for successful ones, is that they're never happy. Recently this week, I lost a very, very close and dear friend who took his own life. He was a camp director. and the only reason that I'm not mentioning his name is because I haven't had a discussion with his wife about this, and but she is very open to, and he was a very open and effusive person when it came to this. This is not an easy, hard thing for anyone to Google if they want to check it out. But he was camp director in the Ontario Camping Association, and was beloved. I mean, beloved was a complete understatement. Yeah, of this man. He profoundly touched thousands and thousands of lives over 35 years of being a camper and a staff member at this camp, and finally being a co-director there. What an employer specifically can do, or let's just take the employer out of it for a second. What can we do? You've got someone who is a victim, who doesn't want to, who is, has 50 years of the stigma implanted in their brain, and they're just not talking about it at all. And you can sit there as much as you want and scream from every social media platform, like you and I do, about talking and saying it out loud and talking to people, but they're embarrassed, and they are still dealing with the stigma. How can you get somebody like that to start talking?
Well, that's tough, because you can't really, it's hard to be intrusive when someone doesn't want to talk. It's hard to push people to talk. Mm-hmm. I think it's always helpful if that person has at least one person that they can connect with, because that one person really can help to kind of penetrate that and continue to be there to offer support. I've heard of people saying, I was the only person that this person would talk to, and I was able to say I'm here. And even times they have one person, they'll still shut them out. But if they're able to say, hey, I'm here, and they can kind of try to get in that way, then they can continue to offer support. And then that would hopefully help to lead to resources if they were open to that. You have to have a trusting relationship
with somebody. So there has to be one person that you can trust.